Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is June 28, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure today to be here with Alexander Miller. Alex, where in the heck you calling in from?
We're calling in from the sunny hills of New Lebanon, New York.
Very cool. First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
I would say the best thing for a human being, for me, because that's the frame of reference for which everything comes through. I would say is art. I think creating, I think is the best thing for any human being, and that can take so many different forms because whether or not you're making a movie or painting a picture or drawing a self-portrait or fixing a car, you are creating something, you are interacting with something. I spend a lot of time in the restaurant business and cooking, even if it's just you're making dinner for you and your partner or something like that's creating, and that in so many ways is a form of art. And again, you can find these there's meaning in everything, and whether or not you look at something as banal as, say, fixing a car or making a dinner as art is almost irrelevant, but you are creating something no matter what. And I think that is just so important because I think in my own personal life I resisted for so long, I think, the idea of what David Lynch would call living the art life. I kind of had this very blue collar approach of oh, that's bougie stuff, work hard, earn a living, and all that. And I think I resisted the idea of kind of leaning into a more artful life. And since I've been doing it, I think it's been probably the best thing I've done in my adult life is leaning into that mentality.
That was super cool, and I appreciate what you said. Art is the best thing for a human being. I agree with you 100%. And I do think what you brought up, culinary art, is one of the highest art forms. You got to eat, so you might as well make it an art form. It's
Exactly.
not like it's so. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
That's an interesting one. I mean, there's so many ways you can process information, and there's so many ways to get it. The biggest ones were written information, auditory information, hearing something, reading something, seeing something. I think for me, I think one of the biggest ones is, I think, visual. Is that I can read something, but I can forget what I've read. I can hear something, but I might get distracted. I might, I could hang on to every word of a podcast or an audiobook, but my cat might walk up to me and I'll, get distracted. But if I see something that's visual, that's moving, it's often moving and speaking too. So I guess it's a little bit of both. But if I see a name on a screen, I will most likely remember it for as long as I can. If somebody introduces themselves to me and says, "Hi, I'm Tom," I might turn around and call him, Richard in 10 minutes. But if I read, directed by Craig Baldwin, I'm like, Craig Baldwin, that's the guy. I'm going to remember that name forever, which has gotten me in trouble sometimes over the years.
Well, no, the neuroscientists say that visual is the most dominant sense. So what you're saying is actually, I agree. It's a dominant sense. It somehow resonates the most with humans. But do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
More innate or more invented? I think it depends on the information, but I think that I think the need to, with collecting information, I think it is innate in a way because we are all very thirsty. I think humans are the most thirsty beings of all, and that applies to primal instincts, whether again it's eating or drinking, sustenance and staying alive. But also I think intellectually we are very curious, and we are very hungry. I know I am. But I think it's innate. But what happens is that the innate kind of, it's like a helix. The innate collides with the other, and I think they kind of perpetuate one another, and that they motivate one another to do that. So you might have a natural curiosity about something, whether or not it's a beam of light dancing across your wall. You're going to say, what is that? Oh, it's the sunlight reflecting off my window. Why is the sun bright? Well, it's bright because, the celestial spheres are magical and all this other stuff. So take that visual curiosity and then elevate that to, I think that curiosity stays with us into our adult years, and that, instead of a glimmer of light on the wall, it's how does someone make an image move on my television screen, or how do I capture something on film, and then that keeps it perpetually going. I'm not sure if I really answered that one.
Yeah, no, that was good, and it's illustrating what I'm looking at. So behind your shoulder, is that a pickpocket? A poster? Yeah. Is that a poster for Bresson?
Yeah, big Bresson fan.
and then the other thing is, no, you should raise that light. Now it's a little glaring. Back up a little, a hair up. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, and then that was amazing, because I noticed as soon as you came on the Zoom how well you were side lit.
Yeah.
So you purposely set up your lighting, or it just happened to haphazardly?
It was a happy accident, which is a recurring theme in a lot of my creative work.
It was a good one, because I was like, dude, that sunlight is just amazing lighting. And then when you pulled that down, so and I love that word, helix. So do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, definitely. I think thoughts definitely create emotions, and I also think, emotions are self-sustaining and self-perpetuating. Is that, I feel we're always bubbling with something, and it comes out in different ways. But I think the thought is what gets the emotion out there, is that we're always feeling, I feel everything all the time. And we're just this roiling kettle of feelings, of things that we want to burst out and do. And then the thought is the kind of the catalyst.
Yeah.
We all have, like I said earlier, we all have these curiosities and these inquiries and this desire to know more. And then you might get the thought of something just might strike you. Maybe you like the way someone's hair looks, or you see, a beautiful animal walk by your window or something like that. And then it kind of, that little, crackle goes in, your neurons start firing off. And then I think that's what gets you to articulate your emotions, is that, they're instigated. Your thoughts are instigated by, very catalysts that go on. I think that we're very fertile people in this way. And then whatever triggers you, it can be the funniest thing, is that my phone could ring, and then I'm thinking like, oh my God, I need to start a new project, or, oh my God, I actually got to write that screenplay I've been thinking about. Or I'll stub my toe, and and then the next thing I know, I'm drawing something or working on a new script or something like that.
That's Joyce, epiphanies in everydayness.
Exactly. Yeah.
I usually say that you could stub your toe and all of a sudden it spurs something on. So Alex, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
do.
Till you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it.
Mm-hmm.
Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yeah.
Can humans think without language?
Interesting. It's funny. We're all thinking, always thinking all the time. And then sometimes I'll have an interaction with someone, and I and I feel like some of us are not thinking all the time. And I think that all the time. I'm sorry, one more time. What was the question?
Can humans think without language?
That's interesting. I think it going on like a primal level, how you articulate what you're thinking is so different. But if I try to think back as far as I can to, you know, a finger painting, or when I would see something that would scare me and I don't know why it scared me. And I think, yeah, definitely we can think without language, because one of my earliest memories, and this was kind of the catalyst for one of my films, Burnt by the Sun, and it opens with a narration provided by yours truly, is that my earliest memory is hiding underneath the dining room table because the sun went behind the clouds, and just the lack of light in the middle of the bright day just really scared me. And it took my mother explaining to me what happened to kind of get me out of this mood, out of the zone that I was in. And it seems so primal to me and so real, and something that really stuck with me. And it's that kind of feeling of like coming out of the cave, you know, and you can't, you're
Yeah.
by the sunlight or something like that. And it's kind of amazing that this memory from so long ago, and maybe, you know, I didn't hide under the dining room table, maybe it was a coffee table, I don't know, but is that you can feel these things without the ability to really articulate why you're feeling them. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that I hope everyone can relate to in one way or another.
Yeah. No, that was good, because the next question concerns, you know, what Chomsky said, that language is not just words, it's culture, tradition, and unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language breaks down, when language doesn't work? What do you do?
I think when language breaks down, you can only, I think, communicate so much with words, in the sense of words being vowels and consonants arranged together to put together a sentence. I mean, I could say potato is my favorite thing, or I could say potato is my favorite thing, and then, you know, it creates this whole other thing. Connotation is so big, tone is so big, and like I think in with some of my own art and some of my own visual art, some of the best moments are the moments where the deafening roar of silence is overwhelming, right? That moment between words is the biggest thing. Because if you aren't comfortable in what I guess what I would just refer to as the deafening roar of silence, then it gives, I think, language a different meaning. I feel like it's kind of like, it reminds me almost like maybe I got Bresson on the mind. I do have Bresson on the mind a lot with something like with Pickpocket. It's like you can see a man alone in a room, and this scene has a soul to it. And there's this like very fascinating silence to that, and it translates to a lot of like the work of like Paul Schrader, who is a big, very much, very heavily influenced by Robert Bresson. And you get that with Taxi Driver, or even his most recent film, Master Gardener. And he's very much enamored with similar material of a man alone, quiet in a room. And I find something very, very primal about that, and very fascinating. That kind of feeds into this idea of language and the lack of language, and how important that is.
Yeah. Where does this phrase originate from? The deafening roar of silence. Is that, who said that?
I don't know. I would like
Anyway,
to say I'm just freestyling, and it's never.
No, that's pretty good. I love it, because
Yeah.
Thelonious Monk said the loudest sound in the universe is silence.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send you my essay on silence, because I wrote a long essay on silence. But I have to go back one step. I forgot to tell you the other quote you evoked was Bridget Bardot said, when I make love, I don't think. And you were saying, we're thinking all the time. And when I heard her say that quote, I said, like, good luck. How can you shut your brain off when you're doing them, one of the most sensuous things your body can do? Can you literally shut your brain off and just experience it as a body feeling thing? It's like people who say, well, when I meditate, I think about not thinking. Well, you're thinking
Right,
about
exactly.
not thinking.
Which makes it all the more daunting. And that's
Yeah,
I love that that's a Bridget Bardot quote, because who else would say that, right? I
that's
mean,
amazing.
maybe, I don't know, Marlena Dietrich or something could
Yeah,
pull that off. Maybe though, it's
yeah,
very Brigitte Bardot. And that's one of those things I've heard that, and I was like, okay, that's great. I was like, is it good, or is it one of those things that sounds great but doesn't
yeah.
really mean anything, right? Like, it sounds awesome. It's a great quote. And whether or
Well, I
not,
think it means a lot. I
yeah,
think
totally.
it represents who she is. I mean, my age group, that was the godhead, the goddess head. When we saw her,
Oh, she still holds up. Don't worry.
yeah, and,
She's
and I
still
mean,
younger
it's
generation.
amazing. And yeah, we just watched the trailer for Contempt the other day, and it's amazing. So, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think that we also feel a lot. um, so much of what we do is guided by what we feel, and it's kind of, it might sound like a cliche for me to say this, but it is kind of a chicken and the egg type
Yeah,
scenario where, are we thinking, or are we feeling, and one begets the other, definitely, without a doubt. But I think so much of what we do is governed by emotion. Again, like, the way you say something can be, so much of what we say and do is governed by what we're feeling. So much of how we do things is governed by how we're feeling. I
yeah,
could,
no, that's good. Things will come back around. Because
yeah,
you brought up this word already, and I was amazed. These are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. First one is thinking a function of the soul?
interesting. It's interesting because when you get to words like the soul, we're kind of thinking like beyond. Let's just take we'll remove the religious connotation from the word, and I think so, because everything that's major and significant, occurs from an original thought. And when you consider, like, whether it's art or arithmetic or, splitting the atom, when you have this like moment of like that, like, epiphany, that realization, that big moment that just kind of, maybe you've had something on your mind for, days, weeks, months, what have you, and then it comes to you in that moment. It can't just be, it feels like it can't be an organic thought, is that there has to be something informing it, whether you call it a soul or whatever you want to call it. This kind of divine otherness that we all feel, kind of steps in, I feel like. And I think that's got a lot to do with it, because I'm sure you've experienced it, because we all experienced it at one time or another. You could be struggling with, maybe a personal problem or an interpersonal problem, or a relationship problem or something like that. And then you realize, like, maybe I should butter the bottom of my toast instead of the top, or
Yeah.
maybe I should, go for a run before I go to my job, or maybe, and I think that there is a communication with, the things that we think and the things that we feel. And I think that's informed by, I guess, what I'd call the soul, or just that divine otherness that guides us around.
I love that word, those two words, divine otherness. So well put, Alex. Thank you so much. This
Yeah,
is
totally.
good. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
That one's scary. It's funny because like a lot of us, I'm, enamored with science fiction, and the relationship we have with technology is so complicated, and it gets more and more complicated, as we go. I remember growing up thinking that what we're doing right now is impossible, like a video chat, right? That seemed so novel in the 90s or 80s. But I have to kind of think that yes, because I do so much of my work is, based on this machine right here, this laptop, this computer. And at times it does feel like an extension of me at times. And it would, like, my younger punk rock version of me is kicking me right now. Because, it's like, oh, you're just this, automaton in front of your computer all the time. But it's true, though. I mean, it's because of this device, I'm able to promote my art, and I can write my reviews, and I can edit video, and I can make these movies and short films and essays and trailer commentaries. And I think that this device, whether or not it's thinking, it's responding to my algorithm, say, and that it's like kind of like how you can warm a house. I think that, like, I have warmed my computer, I've warmed my laptop to my algorithm and to my thinking and to my way of doing things. I think if someone else tried to use my laptop, they'd probably go a little nuts, because it wouldn't, it would probably say, like, why are you trying to go on Instagram? You should be cutting film or something like that.
Really well put. So, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
That one, I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about my upbringing, is that, very, very blue collar, very, like, there's not room for the arts. You should just dedicate your energy towards, like, earning a living, having enough money for the bare necessities, and things like, happiness and artistic enlightenment is kind of like, no, I don't say not available to me, but not something you should concern yourself with. You should worry about, having a tank of gas and, fuel in the heater so you can warm your house, And then I think, in the past few years, I think, again, adopting that art life and adopting the sense that I am a person who has these wants and desires and needs, and I want them. And I think that's, you find meaning in achieving these goals that make you happy. And that, I think that the best form of finding meaning in your life is finding something that you truly love to do, pursuing it, and then actually reaching some sense of, like, completion, or some sense of achievement, and in doing that,
Yeah. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it, or are we more so creating it?
I think it's interesting, because this is something I think about an awful lot, is that, like, take something like color. My green could be your blue. My red could, my cat could see green more than I can, say. And I think that it's hard, because I'm very much a Libra. I'm always weighing everything out. And I always want to say, well, one informs the other, of course. And that's the case for almost a lot of these things. But I think that we are, our perception, our awareness of things is so shaped by experience, and the ability to kind of, like, step out of that and see, can you really see what things are from somebody else's point of view? You can, but only to a certain degree, right?
That's good.
It's so fascinating, right?
Yeah. No, that's good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Ooh, speed of light. But I mean, the speed of thought, I think, because, literally speaking, I think our brains are so so amazing. We have the biggest supercomputers, you know. And I took I hadn't taken a science class, I think, since I was in like junior high school, and then I took a bio psychology class at BCC a couple of years ago, and it didn't have a prerequisite. So I was like, oh, this will be fine. And it's not. I'm like, first day is like, you know, neurons and myelinated sheaths and stuff like that. And then it really knocked me out. I really got into it because it really broke down the way our bodies work and the way our minds work and the way thoughts are fired off and the way that you have like epigenetic switches. And the fact that, you know, we can feel something and within not even seconds, our brain will, you know, fire something off that says, don't touch that, don't grab that, don't look into the sun. And I think that just has to transcend the speed of light because there's nothing quicker than instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Instinct.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right, Alex. So,
right.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded, said, "You can if you expose the tools."
Yeah.
What new tool do you suggest?
It's interesting because I just got into this like really strange confrontation at my job recently, and I remember the conclusion that I had reached was I told myself this person thinks that I am that he thinks that I'm dumb, right? And then I, instead of having this big bold soapbox moment, I let him. I was like, I'm going to let him have that because it is kind of like a Sun Tzu thing, and it's kind of like by doing that I have the advantage, and I think it's a weird form of compassion, and I think that if we are somewhat compassionate with our masters or with our overlords or whatever you want to call them, we can understand them better, and then they will in turn not let their guard down, but a mutual understanding will develop. And in doing that, it kind of unlocks Pandora's box in a way, and that you can. What's that?
So well put. In fact, someone close to your age taught me because they studied judo and jujitsu, and they said the best fighters don't fight the fight.
Exactly.
They know how not. So you knew how not to have the conflict. You just let him have his space. In fact, you're anticipating something that's coming up, but we're not there yet. So here's another one. What new toy do you suggest?
New toy that I suggest. I always recommend people to dabble in photography, whether or not, you know, you have aspirations of being a filmmaker or a photographer, what have you, is that there's something so magical about a shutter going or a frame snapping when you hit that button. And there's such an abundance of cameras out there, and you have, you know, eBay and Facebook Marketplace and estate sales and stuff like that. And you can get these amazing, you know, these little boxes that can capture an image, whatever it may be, is up to you. And it puts the idea of what we see into perspective, because we're very much used to, you know, our phones. We have these amazing little, you know, you can shoot a movie on this thing, you know. But I think to like actually capture an image, whether it's at 24 frames a second or just one frame, I think is something really magical, because it represents, it'll look like, you know, a recognizable reality, but it's not. It's something else. Maybe the exposure is down, or the film speed wasn't corrected, but you might get a happy accident too. So I just always would encourage everyone to go to a yard sale, buy a camera, get a roll of film for $6. You can still get them at the pharmacy, or, you know, buy a Super 8 recorder and go to B&H and, you know, get a Super 8 cartridge. And, you know.
Well, I love that you consider photography a toy, because it is, the words mean painting with light. So, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh, not everything. Um, Historically, I have not been a strong sleeper. I'm a tosser. I'm a tosser and a turner. I worry about a lot. I think what occupies my mind the most, though, when I am tossing and when I am turning, is the next day. Um, because the next it's the you have this idea, this template of what you have in store, whether it's a day off or a day on, or you have to catch a plane or meet a friend, or drive your father to the airport or something like that. There's so many unknowns, there's so many variables that can happen, and it's really easy to fall down this rabbit hole of, what if I get a flat tire, what if the car doesn't start, what if it rains toads. The next day can have anything in store. But also, I think there's something exciting about that. I mean, I would love it if it rained frogs today. That would be a lot of fun. But hey, you never know, right? And I think it's both a worry, and I think this like very eager sense of curiosity of what tomorrow may bring, because you just never know.
Yeah. So McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Alex, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
McLuhan is the real deal. This is another thing that I got for Christmas this year. And I'm familiar with McLuhan, and is just such a fascinating mind. And what I think is so interesting with the conversation that he has is that it's a conversation not about media, it's with media. And by having that conversation, it's having a conversation with us. And I think that's one thing that is missing, I think, from a lot of modern criticism, is that kind of, you can review a film or a show and say, the cinematography is nice and the performances are good, but what is it doing on a grander scale?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not having that like a cranky old man moment or anything like that, but I think that's an important question to ask, because we have TVs in our pockets, we have screens in our pockets, in our hands all the time, to the point where I will say something like, I bought a movie the other day, and someone's like, "You bought a movie? Who buys a movie?" You can stream on your phone or your iPad, man. And the idea of media is fascinating, because we consume it like we do food, like we do water, like we do whatever. And I think now it's been distilled into content.
Yeah.
It's no longer a series, it's content. It's no longer an article, it's content. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out whether or not it's being distilled or it's being expanded on by changing the name. Maybe a little bit of both. That tends to be the case. But with Marshall McLuhan, it's hard to answer, because I don't know if he had the answer, Do any of us have those answers? Maybe not, but the relationship we have
that's a heavy approach, and no one's ever said that, Alex. Bravo to you, because he was about asking questions. He was not about answering them, but he was in the world of academia and writing books, and that's where people go to answer questions.
Right.
So he was constantly doing what Donald Thiel said. He was teasing people to believe his percepts were concepts.
Yeah.
Because he's in a conceptual world. But we'll get into this more. Do artists have moral obligation?
That's an interesting. They're all interesting ones. This one I've got a lot to say there, and it's a slippery slope. It's always a slippery slope with things like this because I'm just going to be broad for a second and take something like violence in the media or something like that, where did the kids in Columbine shoot their school because of they watched Natural Born Killers, or was it because of violent media or the scary rock music that they listened to? No, I don't think so. I think there's other issues at bay. And is there always a relationship there? No, there's always much more going on. However, I think that there are moments where you can see something that's very graphic or violent, and it can shock or upset you, and that's kind of the point, obviously, and a lot of times. But you also have to kind of take into consideration that not everyone is going to be shocked, or not everyone's going to be upsetted by something that's put out there. And I don't think that means that, I don't think it makes it like a moral responsibility for the artist to self-censor. But I think there is this inherent problem that, we're all complex human beings and we all interpret art differently, is that, someone's going to, I guess, miss the point or interpret it in a negative way. And I'm sure this goes, this transcends all scopes of media and time and whatnot. I mean, someone can read Catcher in the Rye and shoot John Lennon, and someone can read Catcher in the Rye and, write a beautiful essay. That's not on J.D. Salinger, though. But I think the thing, though, is that you have, I think, certain aspects of art that I guess I would find, and moral, moral responsibility isn't the word, but I think there's a matter of ableism that comes into a lot of modern media. I think Todd Phillips' Joker film is a movie I like to cite a lot for this, because what you have is that I think there's a fetishization of mental illness, which I think is a very, I think it has a very negative effect on culture and people as a whole. And it also kind of feeds into this narrative of, I think, nostalgia culture and the way films are made around extended universes and so forth. And I see something like Joker, and I think that someone is taking something that they liked when they were younger and kind of bashing this square peg through the round hole because they want it to be, edgy and intense for an older sensibility, more mature sensibility. And, everything can't be everything. You can't make, the comic book character into the taxi driver. I mean, you can if you want to, sure, but who is that really for? And I think when you kind of interpret this kind of style of filmmaking, you're kind of on a slippery slope, because I think that it can backslide into normalizing ableism, and I think glorify irresponsible behavior in a way that will reach many people.
Dude, you really nailed it in so many ways, because my friend and I had a well worded question for Todd at his Writers Guild screening of the Joker. And, it was basically, the roots of his wanting to document G.G. Allen. Yep. And so, there's a direct line from G.G. Allen to the Joker. But that aside, I wasn't able to ask Kubrick this, but I have this, what you just got into is so deep, Alex, and I appreciate you being younger and being able to have this comprehensive view to say normalizing ableism. Amazing wording. And you're teaching me a lot, because here's the basic question that I would ask Kubrick. And I asked James Harris, who worked with Kubrick with 8 films, and he answered this question, but I don't know if it's right, is did Stanley pull Clockwork from UK screens only for 30 years because he knew it was a good PR strategy, or because he really thought his films were causing kids to beat up winos?
That's a fascinating one too, because I'll say that I kind of rediscovered A Clockwork Orange because I watched it a lot when I was younger, because there was like kind of like punk rock currency in that film, because the addicts and stuff like that. And the Clockwork Orange thing is fascinating because, when you take something, when you ban something, it's the best PR you can get. I mean, like the parental advisory stickers when I was growing up, that was like, buy this record, buy this. I mean, like my favorite Chili Peppers album was Blood Sugar Sex Magic because it had a provocative title and had the parental advisory label on there. That just made me want it more. So when you have a video nasty or banned in 32 countries, I'm like, sign me up. Hell yeah. The movie that was banned for all these sensational reasons, that's just going to make me, that's just like, sugar on top of a sundae. Right. But I think it's, Kubrick is fascinating because, he's this icy technician, right? He's always blamed for making very unfeeling, cold movies, but also you watch something like Eyes Wide Shut, which is intensely warm, intensely human, about the vulnerability of marriage and the bodily agency. So it's a fascinating thing, and I think he's canny enough to see both sides of that move. Of I'm gonna do the right thing, and I'm doing air quotes, so do the right thing and pull the film because it might be inciting violence, but I'm also putting a bow on it at the same time in doing so.
Like the British police basically strong-armed him into I mean, according to one documentary. But James Harris, who knew Stanley, right in this chair when I interviewed him, he said, oh no, he did it because he thought they would come and beat up his kids. He had 2 things in mind: family and film. So he was scared that these kids would come and beat up his own kids. So whatever, what you brought up in these last few moments is the thing that McLuhan studied the most, was causality. Mm-hmm. That we think we can figure out what causes what. And we can to a point, but you can never completely solve causality and say this caused this, that it's a zeitgeist. There's hidden factors and there's the factors that are deeper than that.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah. And I mean, I have a funny Kubrick story, if I may. When I was younger, I think I was in fourth grade, and I had heard this Kubrick name, and we had watched The Shining at a very young age because my parents our censoring system was that it had to be in good taste. You couldn't see Jason or Freddy, but you could watch like The Exorcist, Poltergeist, and The Shining, which is ironic because it's so much more terrifying than any guy in a hockey mask, right? So I was aware of the Stanley Kubrick guy, and I was looking through the TV guide, and I saw on a Sunday night it listed Barry Lyndon at like 11:30, directed by Stanley Kubrick. And the synopsis, I vaguely remember it to this day, was that a daring Irish rogue navigates 19th century European, politics or what have you. And I was like, an Irish rogue. I'm thinking this like swashbuckling guy, dueling and getting into sword fights, which all happens in the film. So I begged my mother to tape it for me off television because I couldn't stay up at 11 o'clock and, be 4 a.m. before the movie's over with commercials. So she's sweet enough to tape it for me. And the next day I came down with the flu, and people allege to this day that I was faking it, but I wasn't. So I was homesick from school, and we fired up the VHS player to watch it. And it was a misprint in TV Guide, and they played The Towering Fucking Inferno. So I'm like, I wanted Barry Lyndon, and I got the Towering Inferno. So we did our best to watch the Towering Inferno, and I think it was when O.J. Simpson ran through the hall of the Towering Inferno with I think like a towel to shield himself from the flames is when we shut it off. And my mother, being the sweetheart that she is, went to the video store to rent Barry Lyndon on VHS for me. And the guy nearly fell out of his chair laughing when he said, when she told him it was for her 10-year-old son that was staying home sick from school.
That is good. That's like Cheech and Chong. Earache my eye.
Yeah.
No, actually, there's a good McLuhan joke that goes with this, Alex.
Yeah.
The mother goes into her son's bedroom and says, "You have to go to school. It's the morning. Go to school." And the kid goes, "I don't want to." Well, he's not a kid. The male goes, "I don't want to. I don't want to." And she goes, "You have to go to school." "No, I don't want to." She says, "You're the principal." Are you more? Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
There is. I'm afraid of old ideas because I'm afraid of old ideas because I've acted on them, and sometimes I see the damage that has happened. I think my one of my problems is that I think every new idea I have is brilliant until it becomes an old idea, and then I look at it and I say, "Oh my God, what was I thinking?" There are times when I'll look at short films that I've made, and there is like, when I made Burnt by the Sun, I was so hot on it. After I had gone through that phase, I first made it and I thought it was terrible, and then I showed it to friends and family. Sorry about that. I showed it to friends and family, and they all said it was brilliant. So then I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I can like it now. And then I watch it now, and I'm like, it's terrible. So I've got about 8 ideas that I think are pretty great right now. And then once I realize them and put them together, I'm probably gonna, cringe when I see them, because, at that point I'm gonna see all these errors and problems and then fall out of love with them. So it's a slippery slope again, but I think it's one of those things that it's the artist in you telling me to do better, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also, you'll learn that mistakes and failures are your best teachers. Like Frank Zappa said, I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure.
Yeah, right.
And how in the long run you flip, like Beckett, you fail once, then you fail again better, and then you flip it.
Oh yeah, and I think I hope I fail a bunch, because that means I'm always trying, right?
Yeah.
There's always something to be said for that.
You recalled one of your earliest memories. That was great. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's a blessing. Even when I can recall things that are unsavory or not so great, it's a learnable moment, because you'll learn not to do that again. It goes back to like being a child and touching the stove. I remember these moments of like, it was my father's motorcycle, and I reached for the exhaust, and I paused and I looked at him, and he's like, well, I'm like, all right. And then, ow, burnt my hand. And he's like, hey, you're not going to do that again, right? But it's an effective thing, and we're always learning from these things. And even if it might seem like a curse at times, it's not, because it's learnable. And the other thing too is that I don't know what it is, but I think like I'll recall a story from first grade or something like that, like it was yesterday. In the people I'm talking to are like, I can't remember 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th. I can't remember 6 months ago. How do you remember this shit? And I don't know, and I'm not bragging by any stretch of the imagination, but I love that I can remember all this stuff, because it makes, I think, the whole experience of memory, the whole experience of living, all the better, because I can remember all this goofy, weird, stupid stuff. I'm sure there's a bunch I'm forgetting. We don't remember everything, but the more the better, I say.
Yeah, very good. So, Alex, tell me something. I'm getting a little echo. Do you hear the echo?
There's moments where the audio syncs out a little bit.
Yeah. So here's what. Let's just do a quick thing. Go to settings at the bottom. You see this? Hit the settings button.
And then go to audio. Yeah.
And then go to audio and make sure the echo cancellation button is on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. That's fine. We'll just deal with it. So tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Interesting. I think it's funny because I'm very close with my parents, my mother and father. They did split up when I moved out as an adult. I didn't go through the scary kid divorce stuff, thankfully, which is very common when I was growing up. And I'm very close with my mother, very close with my father, close with my brother as well, who are huge influences. It was the four of us, and the spool of influences, I think, you could say it's equal from all three branches of government, we'll say. It's funny, though, because my father and I, as different as we are, if you put us in the same room together, you're going to tell right away. You're like, oh, well, these two are related. Whether it's the hand gestures or the way we discuss things or just our overall manner, I think is like almost sibling level. But the interesting thing is that while I don't think I connect with him so much on an artistic level, I think his influence of I think handling the everyday is something I think that's rubbed off on me and that's formed me and informed me very much. And it's just very much this thing where he's the kind of guy that'll say, lighten up. He's the kind of guy that would say, dance even if you don't know how, right? Don't be a wet, don't be a dud, don't be a fuddy duddy. If you want to, talk to someone, talk to them. If you don't. Again, it's that thing of just lighten up, laugh a little, fuck off a little. If you want to go for a swim, go for a swim. And it's that, and it's ironic because I think that's very much like an artist mentality, right? But it's I think that's probably one I would cite as a major influence, because there are moments like in my job or in my personal life where it might seem like everything's falling apart and I'm just kind of because at the end of the day, right, what are you gonna do?
Nothing really matters. It's beautiful. Tell your dad that I really appreciated this line.
Yeah.
Dance even if you don't know how to.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That is awesome, because there's this great cliche I live by. If you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
Right.
Yeah. Really, dance is the most liberating, art form. You just, and so outside your immediate family, same question.
I would say like if we're talking like developmental years, it's there's a lot of people. I'm flipping through my mental Rolodex here, and it's hard to single someone out, but I would have to say it would be Josh from the record store. There was a record store in my hometown, Spinnaker, and I always cite it as the place that made me cool, quote. And it got to a point where when I was younger and it was more, music oriented, I could ask a question like, oh, which album from Radiohead is the coolest, right? And be like, oh, the Bends and OK Computer. Which Pink Floyd album is most popular? Oh, it'd be Dark Side, stuff like that. And then growing up more, where I became more infatuated with film, it got to a point where I would just walk in and I would say, like, Josh, what do you have for me? And he would be like, oh, there's this new Park Chan-wook guy you gotta check out. Like, this is back when Old Boy was like, a new thing that you had to like kind of be in the know for, right?
Yeah.
And I would definitely cite that because he was a pretty major force, and I think informing and inspiring my taste at a young age. And he was also, I think, someone that kind of taught me to break away from what mainstream critics are saying, because for the longest time you kind of lived and died by what the big critics said. You would look up a film in the Leonard Maltin's movie guide. We called it the movie Bible in our house growing up. Was that, if it was a tie between, Married to the Mob and Peggy and Sue Got Married, you'd see which one got the higher rating, and then you'd watch that. Or you'd watch, Siskel and Ebert on the television, and then if the new Coppola film got thumbs down, you wouldn't see it, right? And
Yeah.
Josh was one of those ones that said, watch it for you, watch it because you like it, and maybe the critics got it wrong. He was the one that got me into De Palma, and De Palma it's someone that gets thrashed by the critics constantly, whether or not his, all of his movies basically are at best are either divisive or trashed by the critics, and yet they're all uniformly pretty amazing.
Totally. That doc on him talking about cinema, you can hate De Palma all you want, but if you don't watch the doc on him talking, he is so articulate about the art form. In fact, the first videotape I ever made at my media center was De Palma and Marty on Dick Cavett on reel to reel, black and white, and now it's on YouTube. He's very articulate, and I totally understand what you're saying about that. And that's Josh taught you independent thinking. That's a beautiful thing.
Big time. And,
did your parents raise you a particular religion?
No, we did not have religion growing up. My mother's Native American, and my father, I want to say, I think had a more strict upbringing. I think kind of like I guess what you would call like a kind of, I would say, very Protestant upbringing.
Do you pray?
No. But I don't denigrate the act, and I don't begrudge anyone of that. And because I think that we are all in need of a spiritual release in some way or another. And I do almost feel like I am in kind of conversation with something else, whether it's a higher power or however you want to cite it. But there are moments where I will, kind of, maybe say something of a silent prayer, or I think like, wish against the grain. And then I think, and when I say wish against the grain, I think like, I'm going to come home and the fire engine's going to be outside my house or something. Or I'm going to come home and there's going to be, police tape around it. And then when it's not, I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I think that's a form of prayer, if that's preferred nomenclature, if you will.
Alex, if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I would like to say, did you give us love, or did we create it?
Yeah.
Because I think that's like one of the things that would make, I think that's one of the things that you could argue as an existence for like an omnipotent being, is that feeling of love for, for another human, or for an animal, or for an artistic pursuit or something or other like that. Is that because that motivates so much of what you do. And again, it's also something we created. We created language. We created these terms. We created, these definitions. But like, it's something like deja vu. It's something that we experience uniquely to ourselves, and something that we ourselves can feel. But we all know what it is. But we can all agree on what it is. But it's this like very unique thing that happens to you on a mental level. But we all know what it is. Same thing with something like love. Is that you can't explain it or rationalize it or define it, but you can all agree that you've been there or felt it in one way or another.
Very good. I would say if God was asked, did you give us love or did we create it? He would go, that's a very good question. I won't want to ruin it with an answer.
Right.
That's the John Cage answer I always love. Very good question. Wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing too, is that if you had the answer, it wouldn't be fun. You wouldn't get to think about it anymore.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think it's easy to say, so and so is evil. It's easy to fall into that that idea that true evil exists, right? But nothing's ever that simple, I feel like, nothing's ever that simple. And I think that you can see something like, the atrocities of war, the atrocities of people who do bad things, and a lot of the times, like, these large catastrophes that are inflicted on people by people, and you could say that it's evil, and it is. And in a way, it's hard, because I think these things, like, like war, or mass extinction or things like that, I think that they come at they exist because of so much of these large decisions on a bureaucratic governmental level are done because of money, because of nations exist on a collective of a capitalist society, and that can inform, and that is something that is a catalyst for war, for things like that. And I think it gives people who we could characterize as evil a room to express their evil desires. But I think a lot of it comes at the cost of world powers. And I think that, having things like militaries and wars and conflicts and trade delegations and embargoes, and these things happen because of, we have this Earth and we have this planet, and we're still figuring out how to get along on it. And I think that erupts into things where you have, I think, religion, politics, nationality kind of explode when they run into one another. And I think it looks like evil and it feels like evil, but I think it comes at the cost of all these things that we have and that we have to deal with. But I don't think we're very good at dealing with it. So we have things like, we have things like genocide and forced starvation and war crimes and things like that. I think it's a combo shot. So.
Yeah, you really evoke something that's perplexed me for years. I found this book on Hollywood. It's a little cheesy, but it has a lot of cool quotes. And it said that D.W. Griffith said, like 100 years ago, that in 2024, cinema will end warfare.
Wow.
And it's like, that's next year.
Right.
That is a high aspiration.
Yeah.
And, for someone who, is so like hated in the film world in a way, and in another way, he invented the feature film, and is an important contributor to cinema. But I do think 130 of help propagate war. It's part. I mean, it's a war machine tool. So the hidden question really about the evil is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question, Alex, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think that's huge, because you give something power when you give it your energy, when you give it your emotional strength. Is that if I walked outside my front door and some guy rolled down his window and said, "Fuck you, Alex Miller," a part of me would say, "Fuck you, guy in car." But he's gonna get off on that reaction, right? He's
Yeah.
gonna next time he drives by, he's probably gonna do that again. So there's something to be said, because you give someone the power when you feed into their disparity, when you feed into them disparaging you, or something you believe in, or something you care about, right? And more often than not, it's again, it sounds like a cliche to say, but most bullies or most people that have something to prove, are just very insecure people.
Yeah.
And then I think that's another thing where kind of compassion comes in. But I think also it's not just compassion, but there needs to be a sense of, I think, like strategized compassion, in that not empowering them by giving them the accelerant they're looking for, but I think also disarming them by showing them how little effect they can wield over you. It's something I think that I run into a lot of my job, is that you'll have somebody banging their fist on the desk because they showed up for their reservation and the table's not ready, right? Or I ordered a steak medium and I got it medium well, and it really knocks them out when I look back at them and I'm like, okay, so you want a different steak? Okay, do you wanna just grab a seat at the bar and I'll seat you when I can? And it's like it really takes their breath away, because it's like, I was so mad about this thing and I'm so upset. And you're the guy with the power to change all that. And you're just kind of rolling with the punches, right? And it takes the power away from it. And it kind of lightens the room too. Because there's a part of me that was like, oh, it might be fun to get into a pissing match with somebody. And then I'm like, do I have the energy for that? I don't. I really don't. Maybe I did a couple years ago, but now I don't know. I don't. It's just,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it leads perfectly into Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. Because in real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is.
yeah.
And my friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, says when the criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally or socially wrong? So the basic question is, there's a lot of prompts. You can go wherever you want with those thoughts. But the basic question is, does punishment work?
It's funny because with something like something with games and the illusion of winning, is that I have embarked on so many different little asides in life, and I don't regret anything, but I do regret playing video games.
Wow.
there are I think there's something to be said for some games out there, but I remember when I was a teenager, I was playing shooter games on my Xbox, and I had a lot of fun doing it, but I wasn't playing music. I wasn't I felt very stagnant at the time. But I'm not saying I'm better than it, because I do still play simulation games on some level, but I think the illusion of winning is interesting, but what does it really mean, right? But I think when you get to something like you had said with sorry, what was it? Prompt.
Well, there was one that Gregory Bateson said, when the criminal gets caught, does he think he did something wrong, or does he go, wow, I was just not up to my good criminal skills that day?
It's funny because like there's two crimes. The crime exists in like two levels, I feel like. There's the criminal who wants to rob a bank because they want money. And there's a criminal who, you know, steals shit because they want shit, or you know, they boost a car because they can shop it and fence the stuff and get money for it. You know, there's the capitalist criminal, and then there's the other criminal who works on compulsion. And it's fascinating because you could take somebody like the Iceman, the guy that was the hitman for the mob, Richard Kilcher. I can't remember the name, but he had something like, you know, a body count of like something ridiculous, like you know, tens of many people. And he did it because he was part of a money, you know, of an organization that made illicit funds. And then you take somebody like Ted Bundy, who murdered from compulsion because he just he was a sociopath with this innate bloodlust and this really disturbing anger towards women. I wouldn't put those two guys in the same prison, right? Because while I think, you know, Richard Kilkinski, I think is the guy's name, the mafia dude, you know, bad news because, you know, you shouldn't kill people of any kind. But you're doing this crime out of the commission of making money. And for whatever reason, I guess he was really good at it because he got away with it for a long time. And then you have somebody who murders out of this kind of ruthless, you know, anger towards the human race, or whatever you want to call it. And then I think that like what happens is that I think both classes have this innate desire to, they bait authorities. I think that at sometime or another, there's a presence of mind that says, I know what I'm doing is wrong and I want to get caught. And, you know, whenever you do something wrong, there's a voice in you that says, you know, this is bad, I feel bad, or something like that. And then you, on the other side, you have, you know, serial killers or something like that I think, you know, inflict pain because of you know, psychological trauma or what have you. And it's so different, but I think there's the same trigger in their modus operandi, rather, that I think is that they know one way or another that the time is running out, that there's only so much road they can go on, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting, Alex, because I lay so many prompts on that question, people forget, and you really are a good listener as well as a talker and speaker, because the other one was that villains don't think they are bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And you know, were you going to comment on that one?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is something, it's a term I've been toying around with recently, or the past year or so, and it's something I've referred to as the moral qualifier. And it's something that comes up a lot in my watching. I think it comes up a lot in films, but it comes up a lot recently in television. And I think sometimes it's a kind of a shorthand in a lot of our, you know, more edgy television shows. And I think it's something you see in something like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those or not. But what you have is what I call, when I say the moral qualifier, is that with Breaking Bad, you have someone who is a relatable dude. You know, he's late middle age, and unfortunately, you know, he has the tragedy of cancer, and he wants to provide for his family. So what you do is that when you're playing in this moral gray area, you have a quote good guy doing bad things, but the ends justify the means because he's providing for his family and what have you. So when you're in this moral gray area, you go one step beyond and you kind of give the audience these moments where they can recognize something like, okay, so he's doing bad stuff, but he's a good father. He's providing for his family. And then what you have is that you have to create opposition to this guy who is Breaking Bad, who is doing bad stuff.
Yeah.
And then in doing so, you have to go to these extremes of, so what's the answer to this, this everyday dude doing bad stuff? Well, what are you going to do with that? You're going to give the cartel, the people who will hang a tire around your neck soaked in gasoline and murder your whole family, because juxtaposed with what he's doing, that seems so much more worse. But at the end of the day, it's a weird parallel to run, because you are kind of playing this a dangerous game of I think rationalizing bad behavior, but on the other hand, you're also kind of showing that it's the age-old adage of crime doesn't pay. The end of something like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos is really no different from Howard Hawks' Scarface. Is that you end in a hail of bullets and crime doesn't pay, but we have so much more flexibility in this milieu, and it's fascinating, but I think it's also becoming a bit overly exercised, I think.
Yeah, it's like Trump saying he's Robin Hood, or acting like he's doing Robin Hood.
Right.
And then one of the comments said, he's robbing Robin Hood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's pirating, the idea of like the noble, the amiable rogue, right? You take the amiable rogue and then you tag him with you tag him with a body count, and then it's like, oh, how amiable is he, right? Yeah. Robin Hood would shoot, goblets of gold from the sheriff's hand. He wouldn't, run them over with his Aztec.
Right. And Utah Phillips says, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people.
You said Todd Phillips said that?
Utah Phillips, the folk singer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who's entitled to make the rules?
It's fascinating, because the big question, like who makes the rules, right? In a certain degree, we do. We make the rules, but who enforces them? That's the bigger one, right?
Right.
But who makes the rules is that it's we have these basic fundamental things, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. And then I feel like as time goes on, the flexibility of those gets a little bit wider as time goes. Is that don't steal? Okay, well, if you're an investment for steal a little bit because it's in the letter of the law, or brokerage firms or what have you.
Well, that's the whole back to the Trump thing. It's like,
right.
Everybody wants to do on their taxes what's called creative accounting. That's cheating on your taxes. So
Right.
The president cheats on his taxes, and then everybody goes, let's bust him. It's like, yeah, well, this is why he reaches a lot of people, because he's sort of making it feel a legitimate thing. And it begs the question, what's the difference between rights and responsibility?
Right. It's one of those things. I remember, I forget, it was I think it was either Oz or Boardwalk Empire, and somebody said, I wouldn't trust someone that didn't try to steal a little bit. I wouldn't trust someone who didn't bullshit just a little bit on their taxes, that who try to, write off a pair of shoes that they got as a work expense or something like that. But then when you have, the commander-in-chief, former commander-in-chief, hopefully won't be the commander-in-chief again, committing, huge, leaps and jumps of tax fraud. And it's like, how much better can you do? It reminds me, I always think of that line in Chinatown where Jake Gittes confronts John Huston, and he goes, you're insanely wealthy. How much better can you do? And he goes, the future. And I'm like, what does that mean for you? I mean, you're set for life. You could kick up your heels and never work another day in your life, and your kids could never work another day in their life. So what is it? What is it that you're after? And I don't understand that level of greed, I guess you'd call it, is that if I if I had, 20 million to my name, sure, 25 million would be great, but I mean, I wouldn't even know what to do with 20 million, right?
That's funny. We saw Chinatown at USC with Robert Towns'
Oh,
own own personal print,
wow.
But it is, what a question. That it reminds me of Marcel Proust's question I asked you. On what occasion do you lie?
On what occasion do I lie? The thing I always say, and it's true, is that I'm a bad liar, but I'm a great bullshitter.
That's good.
if if I if I tell my partner that I was I was at a meeting instead, when I was actually at the bar with my friends, my face would turn red and I'd start fidgeting, and they're just like, okay, you're full of shit. But if if I said if I talked around it, I might have a fighting chance. But I think that's another one too, where lying, to accept a lie and to sell a lie, you have to believe the lie. And when you believe the lie, you're on the wrong path. When you believe your own bullshit, you are a dangerous person, I would say. If I was changing if I came home with blood on my shirt and I said, oh, I was changing my tire and the wrench slipped out of my and I cut my knuckle, but I had actually, beaten the shit out of somebody, I would believe that lie. And then that would make me a very scary dude. And I think that's something you see in a lot of films and crime shows and neo-noir, I guess.
Yeah, when Tom Waits was asked, on what occasion do you lie? He said, I didn't know I needed an occasion. What does freedom mean to you now?
Now is the big word there. Freedom is always changing. Right now, I would say freedom means that I can pursue things that make me happy, artistic pursuits and things like that, without feeling like I'm missing out, or without feeling like I'm couching responsibilities, or I'm doing myself a disservice by not working or earning money or something like that. Because there was a long period where I would, go for a walk or go to a film or write a film review or something like that. And there's this like kind of nagging feeling in the back of my head of like, you should be working, and I think recently freedom for me is thinking that I can pursue these things and they are just as enriching as I think the regular day to day.
Yeah, this has been fun, Alex, because T.S. Eliot said, freedom is only truly freedom when it appears against the background of an artificial limitation.
Mm.
And then McLuhan was so influenced by T.S. Eliot, he said, how are you to argue with people who insist on sticking their heads into the invisible teeth of technology, calling the whole thing freedom? Like, we're free on the web. We can do whatever we want.
Well, it's funny too, because like it would be easy to say that we're slave to our machines and everything like that, and there's an argument for that too. But it's all about what you do with it, and I think like a lot of the arguments that I default to is that like it's there if you want it. If I love the internet, I love computers, and I love technology because I can. If I think of a quote, I can say, I can look it up right now. If I want to learn how to change a oil filter, I can learn that on YouTube. I mean, I learned how to develop film because of YouTube. I learned that I could shoot on 60 millimeter and Super 8 because of social media, of just people posting videos. I developed film with instant coffee and washing soda and vitamin C powder. I never thought in my lifetime I'd be able to develop film in my house without chemicals and machines that I could never afford, right? But here I am shooting on film and processing film and running it, and I have technology to thank for that. And I think that, technology and things like that is what you make of it, because there's so much out there. And if you want to learn something, it's right there for you. It's just one Google search away, right?
It's amazing. But when you say develop 35 millimeter still film or 30 or 16 millimeter movie film?
Movie film, yeah. I bucket develop. Like, I'll just take the roll of film out of the camera and I'll put it in the solution for 15 minutes and then rinse it, put in the stop bath and then the fixed bath, rinse it, and then hang it up to dry. And then I'll run it through a projector, film it with a digital camera or my phone, and then upload it and edit it digitally.
Oh, and that's with a Bolex?
Yeah, I do with I have the Krasnogorsk, the K3. That's my 16 millimeter camera of use, of preference.
Have you seen that Bolex documentary?
No, I haven't.
Dude, you got to see it. It
Yeah?
is unbelievable. Well, it's mainly because of the premise, because
Oh, totally.
this woman's going to film school, and she goes up to her film teacher and says, my grandfather invented the Bolex. I was thinking of doing a doc on him. And the teacher goes, what? And it took her 15 years to make the doc. And
oh my God.
It's not like that it's a great doc. It's just that it's a subject that anybody who's ever been into film has to see.
Oh,
because
big time, yeah.
the guy who invented the Bolex was making experimental films.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
She interviews like Jonas Mekas and Barbara Hammer, but at the end she goes, oh, and the guy Jackass and David Lynch, and she tries to legitimate the Bolex because these mainstream makers used it also, because kids, they don't know what a Bolex is.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
But there's another thing about 16 millimeter film I really want to encourage you is go to apply to the film farm. Phil Hoffman. It's north of Toronto. It's hard to get in, but you should get in. And you go and you're on summer camp for a week, and you develop 16 millimeter film, and you add flowers or natural. You do natural kind of things because you're on a farm, but you can do whatever you want, and you're working with some amazing other filmmakers for a week, and it's just perfect for someone like you and your age.
So cool.
I'll turn
you the contact information. That'd be great.
Yeah. Send me a reminder, because I feel what we should do now is close out and just do another part 2, because we didn't really get into filmmaking and your writing at all. And so I asked for 90 minutes. So we're almost at the 90-minute spot. So
we could do more. Would you mind if I broke for nature real quick?
Oh no, we can, but I mean, we're going to close out in a minute here if you can.
Yeah. Totally.
And because I got to go, and we can just schedule part 2.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Totally.
So just in closing really fast, I'm curious, you sort of implied this with the way your parents raised you, but where'd you get your work ethic in this theme that's gone through this, which is called compassion? You have this sense of having compassion for other humans. Is it more from the way your parents raised you, or more on your own?
I think a lot of it has been on my own, because I think growing up, I saw like a good amount of anger growing up. Is that like it was normal to see a shoe fly across the room if the phone rang at the wrong time or something like that. So you internalize that and you think it's normal, and then you get out into the world and you realize that if you're hucking stuff around because you don't like the way things are going, you kind of look like a maniac. So I think growing up, I think I received kind of like a second education in kind of navigating the world outside of like the familial sphere, if you will. And I think that's got a lot to do with it, is that I think I kind of brought a more logical conclusion to my upbringing, I think, by moving out and striking out early on my own.
What age did you move out?
21.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then they split?
Yeah. I was like 24 or something like that.
Do you know this? It's a horrible cliche, but it might be true. It says, if your parents split and you're 17 or younger, you're fucked. And I think you're sort of proof. It seems as though you've turned out pretty dang good, dude.
I hope so, yeah.
And they might have read that same survey and they went, just wait.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, I think a lot of it's got to do with like I dropped out of school at an early age. It just wasn't for me. And then I kind of became their tenant. I went from like the angry teenager to like the friend,
Yeah.
And I think that had a lot to do with it.
Amazing. Well, it's truly been enlightening, Alex.
Yeah,
And
definitely. This is great.
I definitely look forward to part 2. And
Yeah.
Even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope our dialogue can never end and we can keep talking forever and ever, man.
Yeah, I could do this all day and all night.
All right. Thanks again, man.
Oh, thank you. You're great. It was great to meet you. Take care.